The movie begins with Tom Dolan, a highly skilled professional thief known as the In-N-Out Bandit. For the past 6 years, Tom has successfully executed 8 bank robberies across multiple states, leaving no evidence or trace. This allows the police to have no leads about his identity. Tom frequently visits a storage facility where he hides the stolen money. The receptionist at the facility is Annie Wilkins, a psychology graduate student. As they interact more frequently, their connection deepens, and it's clear that Tom is attracted to her. After a year of dating, Tom proposes taking their relationship to the next level by purchasing a property and moving in together. Since Annie has been divorced for some time, she quickly agrees to Tom's proposal. However, she is unaware of Tom's secret life as a notorious thief. She only knows that he is a former soldier whose job was to create bombs for the army. Despite Tom's dark past, he has genuinely fallen in love with Annie and is determined to start a new and honest life for her. To make this happen, he decides to turn himself into the FBI. The morning after making his decision, Tom contacts the FBI and speaks with Special Agent Sam Baker. He confesses his identity as the In-N-Out Bandit and admits to stealing $9 million from 12 banks across 7 states over 8 years. Agent Myers listens in on their conversation as Tom offers to return the stolen $9 million in exchange for a lighter sentence. He requests to serve time in a minimum security prison near his city with full visitation rights during his 2-year incarceration. However, Baker is skeptical of Tom's confession. This is because the FBI has received numerous false confessions from people claiming to be the In-N-Out Bandit, so Baker doesn't take Tom seriously. Nevertheless, Baker agrees to visit Tom at his hotel to verify his surrender. Baker orders 2 of his agents, John and Ramon, to go meet Tom. After 2 days of waiting for the FBI, Tom becomes impatient and calls again, this time speaking with Myers. Myers explains that they are dealing with some complications in other cases and assures him the agents will arrive soon. Shortly after the call ends, Tom hears a knock at the door and sees John and Ramon. The agents begin questioning Tom to confirm he is the thief. Tom explains every detail of how he conducts his robberies. He reveals that he carefully selects all 12 banks he has robbed, ensuring they use outdated lock systems in their vaults, which make them easier to blow open. The banks also need to be next to vacant buildings so he can use the ventilation shafts to access the vault. After drilling into the vault, Tom uses custom-made bombs to blow it open. Once he retrieves the money, he meticulously covers his tracks, leaving investigators confused about whether anyone has even broken in. Despite Tom's detailed explanations, the agents remain unconvinced, so he gives them the key to the storage unit where he hides the money. The agents instruct Tom to wait in his room while they verify the cash. After searching for several minutes, the 2 agents finally find the boxes of money, confirming Tom's story. John orders Ramon to load the boxes into their vehicle and tells him that the money belongs to them now. Ramon realizes John's plan and strongly objects, but John explains that this is a rare opportunity for them. He argues that if they simply arrest Tom and turn in the money, only lawyers and high-ranking officials will benefit, while they continue to bust their butts and risk their lives for nothing. John convinces Ramon to go along with the plan for the sake of his family's future, and Ramon reluctantly agrees. As they load the boxes, Annie arrives and asks what they are doing with Tom's storage unit. The agents introduce themselves as Tom's former Marine buddies and claim he asked for their help moving some items to a new house. Believing their story, Annie assumes that she and Tom are moving into the house he bought for them, so she leaves the guys to carry on with their task. With a smile on her face, she returns to her office and watches the agents on the security footage. Tom waits patiently for the agents to return, not knowing they've gone to an abandoned house to stash the boxes of money. Meanwhile, Myers tells Baker that Tom has called again. Unaware that his agents were already handling Tom's case, he attempted to call John, but John didn't pick up. Later that night, the agents return to Tom's room and engage in a tense conversation. Eventually, John points a gun at Tom, planning to kill him. However, Tom reveals that the money they take from the storage unit is only $3 million. He explains that he hides the remaining $6 million because he anticipates that something like this might happen. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door. It's Agent Baker, who decides to follow up because he thinks John and Ramon haven't resolved the case. Ramon opens the door for Baker, who steps in to continue questioning Tom. However, Baker notices John holding a gun, and Tom signals to him. John quickly shoots Baker in the chest. Chaos ensues in the room, with Tom grabbing Ramon's gun and pushing John out the window, causing them both to fall. Annie, who is on her way to visit Tom, sees the commotion. Tom takes Annie and flees in a car while Ramon fires at them. The agents also get into their vehicle, leading to a high-speed chase. Annie, confused by the chaos, demands answers from Tom. Tom admits he plans to surrender but promises to explain everything once they're safe from the pursuing FBI agents. After successfully evading their pursuers by switching cars, Tom begins to explain. He confesses to being the In-N-Out Bandit and says he plans to turn himself in to atone for his crimes before starting a new life with Annie. They stop at a park, where Tom provides further details. He assures Annie that he never kills anyone or spends any of the stolen money. Tom explains that his life of crime begins after his mother dies of illness while he is deployed. When he returns home, he finds his father devastated by her death, unable to muster the strength to work. His father's poor performance led to his dismissal, and to make matters worse, the company CEO embezzled the employee pension fund, leaving his father penniless. Lacking the will to fight for his rights, Tom's father takes his own life. To seek justice, Tom robs the bank where the CEO keeps his money, stealing $658,000, more than his father earned in his lifetime. He explains that he never spent a dime of it, and when Annie asks why he continues doing it, he says it's not about the money, but the thrill it gives him. However, everything changes when he meets Annie, prompting him to abandon his criminal ways and start anew with her. As they leave the park, Agent Myers arrives at Tom's room, which is now a crime scene. He sees Baker's body and promises to bring the perpetrator to justice. Meanwhile, Tom explains to Annie that he will likely be pinned for Baker's murder, and no one will believe his words because he's a criminal. Knowing the feds will surely come after him, he urges Annie to leave town so she won't get involved. Myers talks to John and Ramon, and they tell him that Tom shot Baker and that they found no money to prove he's the thief. Tom takes Annie to the bus station to send her away to another town, but Annie insists that he come with her. Tom explains that he must finish everything to prove his innocence in the murder. Once Annie realizes that Tom's decision is final, they say their goodbyes. The next day, Myers calls the two agents into his office to discuss Tom's case. They review Tom's background as a former Marine with expertise in creating and defusing bombs. Myers also mentions Annie, who appears on the hotel's security cameras during the crime, and orders the agents to investigate her. Later that day, Annie, who decides not to take the bus and returns to work, calls Tom to inform him she has security footage showing John and Ramon in her warehouse. Feeling worried, Tom urgently warns Annie to leave the area and find safety as soon as possible. After the call, Tom steals a vehicle to rush to the warehouse and rescue Annie. However, John finds Annie first and demands that she reveal where Tom and the hard drive are. Annie runs to escape but is caught by John and brutally beaten. Annie manages to stab John in the thigh and hit him in the face, but he still overpowers her and knocks her unconscious. Ramon enters upon hearing the commotion and stops John from shooting Annie. He tells John that Annie seems dead since he can't feel her pulse. They search for the hard drive but they are unable to find it. Ramon suggests they leave before anyone sees them. When Tom finally arrives, he finds Annie unconscious and immediately rushes her to the hospital. He quickly exits the building to avoid the police who are swarming the area. In his car, he calls the FBI and uses Myers to get in touch with John. While Myers listens to their conversation, Tom reveals he has given them the $3 million he steals and plans to surrender. However, since they involve his girlfriend, Tom threatens John, saying he will come after him. Knowing Myers is listening, John pretends to know nothing about Tom's accusations. Later that day, as Tom stops at a red light, a police officer recognizes him and radios his location before starting a pursuit. John and Ramon receive the information and join the chase, along with Myers. After evading the police tailing him, Tom parks in a quiet spot. Moments later, while trying to escape again, Tom encounters Myers, leading to another chase. Myers continues to follow Tom until Tom ambushes him, resulting in a struggle. Tom manages to hold Myers at gunpoint and explains that John shot Baker. Myers urges Tom to surrender so they can resolve everything, but Tom wants to handle things his way. He states that John is the one responsible for everything, while Ramon is simply involved. Tom hands Ramon's gun to Myers before running off. Later that night, while staying at a hotel, Tom contacts the hospital where Annie is being treated and learns that she is safe. The next day, John goes to the hospital to ensure Annie won't survive, but his plan is thwarted when he sees Myers guarding her. Later, Myers summons John again to question Tom's accusations and the money he mentions. John stands his ground, insisting that Tom is making everything up. Ramon suddenly enters, and Myers hands him the gun that Tom took from him. After the meeting, once John and Ramon are alone, Ramon asks what their next move will be. John responds, laced with a threat, warning Ramon about the consequences for his family if he exposes their actions. That night, Tom decides to follow Ramon to his house. When Ramon's wife notices his distress, she urges him to do the right thing. Without disclosing the entire truth, Ramon tells his wife that everything he is doing is for her and their children. He asks her to remember this if something bad happens to him. Hearing a strange noise, Ramon heads to the garage to check it out. Suddenly, Tom appears and immediately attacks Ramon. Knowing Ramon is a good man who got caught up in John's wrongdoing, Tom urges him to help. For the sake of his family, Ramon decides to cooperate and reveals that he has Annie's security footage, which he took when John wasn't looking. Ramon also warns Tom to get Annie out of the hospital as John plans to kill her. Tom rushes to the hospital to check on Annie and then takes her to a hotel. The next day, Tom calls Myers while buying supplies and tells him that Annie had nothing to do with the robberies. Myers asks about Tom's next move, but Tom keeps the details to himself. Despite Myers' persistence, Tom remains determined to carry out his plans. He goes back to their hotel room and starts assembling a bomb, with Annie watching him. Tom acknowledges that they both know he'll end up in prison after everything, but Annie vows to visit him every day, even with her hectic schedule as a nurse. The following day, as Annie begins to recover, she insists on accompanying Tom. Tom eventually agrees, and they park close to John's house. Tom calls John, urging him to admit his crimes, but John refuses. Because of this, Tom gives him 10 seconds to run out of his house before blowing it up. John gets into his car and speeds away. Meanwhile, Tom hands Annie the hard drive and the key to his warehouse, asking her to give everything to Myers. Elsewhere, John goes to an abandoned house where they hid the $3 million. He contacts Ramon, explains the situation, and requests his assistance. When Myers meets Annie, she hands him the hard drive and then reveals the remaining $6 million concealed in the boxes. Meanwhile, as John waits for Ramon, Tom appears holding Ramon hostage and orders John to drop his weapon. Tom once again urges John to confess his crimes, revealing that he now has the security footage Ramon gave him. Upon hearing this, John becomes enraged, resulting in a fight between them. John draws another gun, shoots Ramon, and then engages in a gunfight with Tom. After a brief shootout, John manages to grab the bag containing $3 million and escapes. Tom quickly calls John to inform him about a second bomb planted in his car. Initially, John doesn't believe him, but when he stops to check under the seat, he realizes there is indeed a bomb. Tom explains the bomb is highly sensitive and warns him not to leave the car if he wants to survive. He urges John to surrender and wait for the bomb squad. Out of fear and with no options left, John complies. Tom retrieves a recording of John's confession from Ramon's body and mourns his death. As John's car is surrounded by police led by Myers, the bomb squad discovers that the bomb is fake. Myers immediately orders John's arrest and recovers the stolen money. Back at his office, Myers finds an envelope containing the recording of John's confession. He later meets Annie and Tom outside the station to finalize their deal. Myers thanks Tom for helping bring John to justice and promises to do everything he can to shorten Tom's sentence as recognition of his intent to change. Ready to face the consequences of his actions, Tom bids Annie a heartfelt farewell, marking the end of the film.
Thank you so much for staying till the end. If you enjoy this video, please consider leaving a like and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for future uploads.